Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How are we doing this week, Rolo?
Good. We're surviving the weather we have down here.
Yes.
I know I was driving all over the valley today, and I was just like, I hope this drive's not all the way to where I come to record the podcast, but it was insane. But I bring that up only to say, doesn't matter the weather conditions, doesn't matter what's going on, nothing's going to stop me. And I'm sure Pete feels the same way. Nothing's going to stop us from recording this episode for you guys.
Absolutely not. It's never stopped us before, and it's not going to stop us now. But before we get to anything, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
All right, so we got a good amount of news this week. Number one, this is, I'm hyped about this. They just announced that Rogue One is going to re-release in select IMAX theaters August 26th. And that obviously is coming on the heels of Andor to promote, the show Andor. So, regardless if you guys are going to tune in for that, which I hope you do because the trailer looks amazing. I don't know about the listeners out there, but Rogue One has to rank like in the top 5 Absolutely. Of my Star Wars films. It's one. Me and Pete have talked about it. It's a movie that I like to put on and watch, when I can't decide which Star Wars movie to watch. It's just so good from beginning to end, and it's one film. And love the characters, even though they're short-lived, obviously. Right. But I want to experience that again in the theater because I just remember going to the theater and just being totally blown away by what I had just seen. That was the first standalone Star Wars film. So I'm really excited about that. I'm sure, Pete, you share that sentiment.
Hell yeah, man, because even though I did get to see this one in theaters during its first theatrical run, I did not see it in IMAX. So I would be very, very, very interested to go see that. Definitely something that I'm going to take part in if our local IMAX ends up getting it, which I hope so. I'm crossing fingers that it is.
Yeah, I was about to say that too. Otherwise, we're here getting hyped for nothing. Well, hopefully that works out.
I don't think anything else is coming out that around that time as far as big blockbusters to fill it. Like, I looked at the schedule today and it was not listed, but that's only because I can't see what's happening, on August 26th as of right now. But what they are showing at our local IMAX, if you noticed, it's E.T. E.T.'s back in theaters, and they're
nice.
I didn't know that. So I guess when there's no real big brand new release to put in IMAX, they'll bring out old classics, I guess, maybe. I don't know if that's the schedule or how it works, but our IMAX is showing E.T., so hopefully they'll decide to.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, show this movie in there. It's not like one of those like super indie films where it's like they're only going to put it in the artsy fartsy locations.
Right. No, I don't think
Rogue
so.
One is, Star Wars is just such worldwide acceptance in this franchise. So I feel like they are going to show it in quite a bit of IMAX theaters. So
now
I'm going to keep my hopes up on that.
Right. No, me too. If I hear something, I'll tell you, and vice versa. The one thing that you did note, and I read in that article, but it was very vague, is includes an early look at Andor. It's not the whole first episode or anything, right? Or is it? What do you think it's going to be?
I'm just assuming that it's just kind of like another sneak peek right before the show drops, something that we haven't seen like online or in on TV.
Okay. Yeah, maybe like a little behind the scenes featurette or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, so in other news, we had a bit of a controversy this week. This one was pretty recent, kind of just totally off the radar. I don't know how it actually came up, but it's Mark Ruffalo, who everybody knows as the Incredible Hulk from the MCU. I guess he was being asked some questions about like the lack of success, so to say, in Marvel Phase 4, which I totally disagree with, by the way. Me and Pete are both mega Marvel fans just as much as Star Wars, and I think I don't know about you. I just feel like I do love everything that has come out in Phase 4. But besides the point, I guess for whatever reason, Mark Ruffalo decided to defend Marvel Phase 4 criticisms by saying, the thing that Marvel has done well is that inside of the MCU, they let a director or actor recreate each piece to their own style or likeness. And then he proceeded to say that that's not the case in Star Wars, that you're going to get the same version of Star Wars each time, which I totally thought was like unjustified. I feel like that's a comment from somebody that maybe has just seen the original trilogy and, maybe a movie or a flick or two from the prequels and sequels and doesn't have the full grasp of Star Wars like this fandom does with the animated series, the individual standalone films like Rogue One and Solo, which and even Last Jedi. Like, let's talk about Last Jedi. Last Jedi is so different from the other films, and that's why I love it so much. So I don't know. I feel like he probably didn't necessarily mean it. He just got backed into a corner and started grasping at straws. So
right, but the Star Wars fans came after him in droves, I would assume. Yeah, I can see what you're saying about it being a knee-jerk reaction, or kind of like he didn't know exactly what to say, so that's what he said. But he was probably basing it off of that small amount of fan base, which is unfortunately the vocal minority in some cases when it comes to the hate that some films get. But at the same time, like, the Star Wars fan base and the MCU fan base, yes, there's a lot of crossover, you and I being, prime examples of such, but they are two very distinct kind of fan bases as well. You mentioned Solo, like, for instance, that movie was not appreciated at all as much as I think like it should have been by a large majority of the Star Wars fan base. So that was definitely, he can't base it based on his own fans, I guess, for lack of a better term, versus the Star Wars fans, because they are not the same kind of fan. The Star Wars fans are very, very traditionalist for the most part. They don't like when you color outside the line, so to speak, as far as the original trilogy goes. Whereas the Marvel fans, they are used to having an abundance of different titles that sometimes interact and connect, and that if they came from the comic book world, then they're used to that kind of a thing. They're used to taking chances and long shots as far as different interpretations of established characters, whereas the Star Wars fan base are not so eager to let that kind of thing slide. You know what I'm saying?
No, I totally agree. I'm glad that you said that, because, as you were speaking, I was thinking about this. And I think what it basically comes down to is, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is now taking the next step as far as like the evolution of the fans, the expectations. I would compare what Marvel's going through right now with Phase 4 is they're trying to transition into new characters. They're getting away from the traditional characters because obviously, like, your Iron Mans are gone, your Caps are somewhat gone, so to say, and now they're having to create new characters, which I love because I'm a newer comic reader. But Star Wars has been in that, ever since the original trilogy was over. The Star Wars fandom has been in that. I don't want to call it a rut, because I don't think I disagree with that, but for lack of a better word, let's call it, they've been in that rut, in that, if it doesn't have anything to do with the original trilogy, and then it's not done incredibly well on the exact same level, then they're going to criticize. And I think Marvel is finally experiencing that. They were just hitting home runs after home runs in the theaters, but now that they're getting away from the older characters because the story's closing on them, right. I think now they're kind of setting themselves up in the same position as far as toxicity in the fandom rather, that Star Wars has like been in for quite a while. And it really just comes down to, people need to grow up. There's nothing wrong with trying new things. I feel like there's a lot of success in that, but I guess you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's the phrase that I think of with this, and people just expect the original and no originality, which is right. It's the exact same word, but it's just like they don't let the franchises evolve, and they're just like, no, it's not Luke Skywalker, whatever. It's not Darth Vader. I don't want to have anything to do with it, which is very disappointing, but it is what it is, as they say.
No, you're right. I mean, it's kind of like, there's going to be toxicity in every fan base. There's going to be gatekeepers more than anything of every single property, every single pop culture thing, there's going to be people who are traditionalists who are going to say, this is not my Star Wars, I want my Star Wars and whatnot. But I mean, you are correct in saying, like, people need to try new things, because just thinking of it like in a food and a palate kind of a thing. I mean, you cannot eat chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese your entire life just because that's what you ate when you were 5. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Shout out to all my friends out there who I always try to get to try new food. It has to be a weekly conversation where I'm like, oh, this is so good. And they're like, oh, I don't like it. And I'm like, have you ever tried it? And usually like 90% of the time, the answer is no, I've never tried it. It's exactly what you said, because they didn't like it when they're 5, or rather, they thought it was gross when they were 5. It's like, I don't want to try it. And, I feel like that's the fan bases that we're talking on. Like, dude, like, get over it. Like, we want new material. We want substance. We just want more story, and it's being delivered, and it's being delivered incredibly well. I'm not saying everything's great, but go with it. Like, enjoy the ride and just experience something new. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
I couldn't have said it better.
All right, speaking of new, I think this is a good transition. The next thing this week in Star Wars, and I just read this today actually, Oscar Isaac, who we all know as Poe Dameron from the sequel trilogy, he's now open to returning to the Star Wars franchise if a great idea, story, director, and opportunity was presented to him. This is kind of a little bit of a shocker for people that do follow, these actors and such outside of the movies. I know Oscar Isaac was kind of vocal after Rise of Skywalker, saying he was kind of done with the Star Wars franchise. But now, and I'm attributing this to the success of Star Wars post sequel trilogy. I'm sure that this guy's watching how it's evolving with the live action Disney Plus series and such. And I think, I loved Poe Dameron in the sequel trilogy. I thought he was easily one of the coolest characters, regardless of the direction the character went in the Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And I think he's now recognizing that too, that there's a huge following for him. People love him as Poe Dameron, and I for one would totally love to see a Poe Dameron series or movie or what have you.
That is surprising, like you said, because of the way that they parted ways, I guess, towards the end. But it's also more surprising because I feel like since Rise of Skywalker in the last 4-ish years or whatever since it's been, he's kind of shot up as far as Hollywood level. Like he's become more of a leading man since then in certain things. It was cool to see him come back to, I guess, the geekdom with Moon Knight, but I'm surprised that not at all that it would be a step backwards if he were to come back to the Star Wars universe, but more of like, where's he going to find the time now that he has opened his career up to this whole new leading man side of it? But that's
totally true. Like from the new faces that we got in the sequel trilogy, speaking of Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and him, he's definitely the one whose career took off. So I think that's really awesome, because if he's open to coming back, then I think it totally does create momentum for not only all the actors to want to come back, but for the storytelling. I think there's recognition on both the fans and Disney's end that the storytelling in the sequel trilogy didn't necessarily end in the best way. Mm-hmm. But if you have an actor, a high profile one at that, who wants to come back and add more substance to where it actually creates better storytelling, then who better than Poe Dameron?
Right, exactly. I wonder if the internet was around back in the original trilogy. Like, you look at those 3 actors you just listed versus the original 3 leads, I guess, like Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. Obviously, Harrison Ford is the one whose career took off as far as the leading man Hollywood roles. Yes. Both the other 2 did pretty well for themselves too, but how hard would it have been back then? Like, I guess right now I'm forgetting, I might know the answer, but how hard was it to get him back for Return of the Jedi after his career took off, in 1980, basically? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know if anyone, he would have been the holdout to say like, well, I'm really busy with all this other stuff. So it's kind of on par of the same thing. Granted, it's not the same era, it's 2 totally different time periods, but that would be the best way to compare the 2, is Harrison Ford and Oscar Isaac were basically the same trajectory after the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Okay, so we also have a couple of anniversaries that I noted that we'd like to celebrate. Peter Cushing joined the Force August 11th, 1994. So was it maybe like 18 years since that? Or is my math totally wrong?
I think your math is totally wrong. I think
94, 04, 14. Okay, maybe closer to 30 years.
That's about 30 years ago.
The engineer inside of me is dissipating, which I totally have no problem with.
That's okay. Although your new career does make you work with numbers also, so you might want to...
Okay, yeah. You know what? Let's just, I'm going to go ahead and retract that statement. It's Sunday, guys. Give me a break.
That's fine.
All right.
Peter Cushing, of course.
Go ahead. Peter Cushing, yes, thank you. Peter Cushing, of course, is Grand Moff Tarkin. So, very great actor. Look forward to, hopefully seeing the Rogue One film in IMAX so that I can relive, when they kind of brought him back to life, so to say.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was, I had never seen anything like that when he showed up on screen. I was totally blown away. And we also had Kenny Baker join the Force August 13th, 2016. My math is good on this one. That was only 6 years ago. And Kenny Baker, of course, played R2-D2 for anybody who might not be familiar with that. Okay, let's do some birthdays. First, we have Misty Rosas, born August 14th. Forgot the year, I'm sorry. She plays Queel and Frog Lady in The Mandalorian. So she's kind of like one of those stunt actors who she's doing the movements and such. Queel, you'll remember from the first season of The Mandalorian. I don't remember his species, but he's the alien species that really helped Din Djarin along the way.
Oh,
and
so Queel is not Frog Lady. Like that's not the same character. Oh, so this Misty was two different characters. Okay.
Yes, and then she was Frog Lady from season 2 of The Mandalorian, where she's taking care of Grogu, and Grogu is unfortunately, just snacking on her kids. Great stuff, but even as terrible as it is.
Yeah.
Another birthday we have is Bonnie Peace, August 10th. She plays Beru Lars in Revenge of the Sith and Kenobi. And then last but certainly not least, Ian McDiarmid, August 11th, who plays none other than Emperor Palpatine.
Now, he doesn't voice it in the cartoons, right? Also?
That's a good question. I should have looked that up.
I can't remember that. I know I always hit you with these questions that I just expect you to be the encyclopedia, but
that's kind of like my inner fanboy just accepts stuff at face value. It doesn't require too much deep research. If it shows up at the credits at the end and I read it, then that's basically the extent of my research. I know I've gotten better at it now because of our podcast, but
right.
I should look that. I should have known you were going to ask me that.
Actually, I just looked it up right now, and sure enough, yes, he voices Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars Rebels. Yes, he did.
Awesome. What about in the Bad Batch? Does it say that by any chance?
It does not list him as the Bad Batch. No.
Okay.
It says that he was obviously in the original, in the prequels, and then he voiced him in the Rebels, and he came back in Rise of Skywalker, and for that one scene in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
awesome. Okay. Well, happy birthday to all our Star Wars celebrities out there.
Yes. All right. Well, the happy birthday to all of those Star Wars universe characters and actors. Before we go any further, Rolly, I want to take this moment to ask everyone to please, once again, like, share, and subscribe and rate. It's very important, and you know that. I'm going to say it every single episode at some point. I didn't say it where you told me to say it, but I'm saying it now. So anyway, now that we're past that, Rolly, why don't you hit us with a synopsis of this week's episode?
All right, guys. So remember, this is actually a second part from the last episode, which was entitled The Lost Commanders. So in this week's episode of Rebels, while Kanan continues to struggle with trust issues, the other rebels begin to form friendships with the old clones. And when Agent Callus arrives, all must join together to battle the Imperials.
Excellent. Okay, so we see as the show opens, it opens with Sabine. She's explaining to the team that repairs are going to take a while longer on the Phantom than expected, but there's a storm approaching, and Kanan responds that if the Empire arrives before they take off, the storm will be the least of their problems. Rex provides the team with the coordinates of every Republic-based separatist installation, pirate hideout, smuggler's den, and a few Mandalorian bases in the Outer Rim. Ezra implores Rex to reconsider going back with them, but Rex reiterates that their war is over, and they don't care to get mixed up in another one. Hera, who is finishing up repairs on the Ghost with Chopper, alerts the team that the Empire has finally arrived. So basically, shit's on.
Yeah. And this is a follow-up again from the ending from the last episode where the probe droid encounters the rebels with the Clone Wars. He's already reported the information back to the Empire, even though he destroyed them, or even though the rebels destroyed the probe droid. So now, sure enough, the Empire showed up, and due to the problems with the Phantom, the rebels are still stuck with the clones, so they can't easily get away. So that's kind of what we see progressing in this episode.
Right. So at that point, it's established that there's a storm coming. So there's all of this pressure that's building up on them. They got to get out, but at the same time, they can't because the ship still needs repair. So take it from there.
Okay. So Hera sees the Star Destroyer approaching out of hyperspace as the Empire is now going to close in on the signal that Wolf sent out asking for help, which he immediately does regret. Yeah. So Hera powers down the ship and Chopper himself at Chopper's dismay, of course, always upset, to prevent the Empire scanners from picking up on the Ghost. The Empire deploys TIE fighters to the last known coordinates of the clones. Agent Kallus calls Commander Wolf back, to Wolf's surprise, as the Empire never calls back, as per his words. Wolf explains to Kallus that there are no Jedi, as he originally alerted, and that his old cybernetic eye must be acting up. Kallus shows the probe recording of the clones harboring the Jedi, at which point he threatens them to surrender or be destroyed. So Rex kind of immediately jumps in front of the mic, so to say, for Wolf, and Rex tells Kallus, hey, if it's a fight you want, I hope you brought a better class of soldier than those stormtroopers. And Kallus responds, they serve the Empire well and have a great many of them. And Rex responds, well, you're going to need all of them. So this was a really cool interaction, because I know, again, jumping chronology here as far as release order, but the Bad Batch is out. And in the Bad Batch, we actually see the transition from the decommissioned clones to stormtroopers and the Empire's reasoning behind it. And basically, it's Grand Moff Tarkin's decision, and he says, we're spending too much money on these clones. We don't need them. We've won the war. We can live off of volunteers. And that's basically what the stormtroopers are. They're volunteers. But the audacity of the Empire also, again, they won. So the class of armor that the stormtroopers wear is not in the same league as the stormtroopers. Not in the same league as the clones. If you're a casual viewer, you might see that the armor is the same. They look relatively the same, but it's stressed in many of the animated series that, it's just not exactly the same. So basically, clones can take certain amounts of blast from pistols and rifles, but every time you see a stormtrooper get shot in the movies, that's it. They're one and done. So it's like, whoa, that's not really armor. It might as well be plastic.
It looks like plastic, yeah.
Yeah. So again, for any casual viewers out there, you don't look at the clone armor as exactly the same, even though it looks the same. The clones very much have real armor. So I love the interaction with Rex and Kallus here, because Rex is just throwing it in his face like, you guys made the wrong decision decommissioning us once, the Empire won.
Yeah.
So going back to the episode, sure enough, the TIE fighters that were deployed, they locate the rebels and the clones, and they begin firing on the Republic tank. The team works together to bring down the TIE fighter, particularly the clones, in old Clone Wars fashion. I really loved that part that they kind of featured there, a little action sequence, and Rex spitting out commands to Gregor and Wolf, and they're just so in sync. Yeah. It flashes back to Clone Wars, like I mentioned, and it's just a really cool callback. So Ezra proceeds to state, we make a good team if we all fought together. And Kanan says, yeah, tried that once, didn't work out so well. So Kanan, we're already in our second episode of Kanan, being involved with the clones, and he's just still not sold on it. So he's still fighting it to this point. He doesn't trust them. Order 66, PTSD. There's just a lot of stuff going through Kanan's mind where he cannot just easily trust Rex, Gregor, and Wolf the same way Ezra, Zeb, and Sabine currently are. So the scene cuts, and we see on a Star Destroyer, Kallus giving orders to issue a ground assault. Meanwhile, Ezra has a chat with Rex, and Ezra tells him, So what was it like to fight in the Clone War? Rex says, I don't think the fighting ever got to Lothal. I tell you, war was never dull. The general I fought with was amongst the greatest of the Jedi. Of course, he's referring to Anakin. I trusted him with my life more times than I can count, and I tried my best to keep that trust. And as he's having this conversation with Ezra, they show Kanan again listening to the words, and he's still like annoyed, but at this point you can kind of see like he's processing it. It's really driving home the point that Rex is showing him, I'm not the same class of clone that betrayed your master. And he's fighting it because, you know, Kanan was so young, and he's when Order 66 was issued, it's not easy for him to accept this. Rex it doesn't matter that us as the viewers love Rex. We saw him do so many great things in the Clone Wars. Kanan didn't see that. He only saw it from the linear perspective of his master got shot down, and he had to go into hiding. And here he is now, full-blown adult several years later, and that's the last thing he's ever known about the clones.
I mean, in psychology, you know, it's taught that whatever age you are, that some sort of trauma happens, you remain in that age whenever that trauma rises again. So it only makes sense that Kanan, a full-grown man, you know, he's had life experience, he's more of a master balanced Jedi at this point, but whenever he's reminded of that day, he goes right back to being, you know, 7 years old or whatever he was.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, but that's just seems to hold true for anything that we hold in. And I guess that's why it's always said, like, you really have to like speak and release your issues to at least get it off your shoulders. So That makes a lot of sense. So getting back to the episode, Sabine's done working on a Phantom. It's ready to go, but now AT-ATs have arrived. And I thought that was really cool because if you guys remember in the last episode, I was saying how the Republic tank that the clones used is basically the early version of the AT-ATs. But when you see the AT-ATs show up, they're like 5 to 6 times larger than these original Republic tanks. So again, it just goes to show you how big the Empire thinks they are, that, you know, it's just the size. They just have to appear big. They don't necessarily have to be the strongest, you know, sensible vehicles, as we see how easily AT-ATs are down with harpoon cables or calculated attacks. But they don't care. They're going to look menacing, and they're going to beat you just from their intimidation tactics. Okay,
I didn't ask you, but like, did you watch any of the ILM documentary?
Oh, I gotta bring it up.
sorry. I'm not going to beat you up about it, but one of the things that they went over was how they designed the AT-ATs and where it came from, and it was pretty cool because one of the main designs on it was the fact that it had like a head with a neck that could turn back and forth, which is interesting because it's that portion of it is about to play out in the next few minutes of our recap.
Yeah. Guys, I'm going to watch Light and Magic, I promise. Pete, I know it doesn't mean to make me look bad. I know he's making a point, but I feel bad because that's 2 weeks in a row now where I haven't done my homework.
That's all right. It's all right.
All right. So going back to the AT-ATs, as soon as the team sees them, there's a little bit of a conversation between the clones, and Wolf says, how many legs they got? And Gregor goes, looks like 4. Wolf, 4? How are they not falling over? And Gregor says, well, you look at the size of those things. And Rex is like, reinforced armor plating, heavy cannons, and anti-personnel blasters. And Ezra chimes in, I'm glad you guys are so excited, but those giant death machines are on their way to blow us to bits. So the clones are basically kind of like, I wouldn't say excited, but they're just kind of amazed because everything that you're seeing from the Empire side, it's the evolution of like the vehicles and such that the clones had. So they're just like blown away by these upgrades, quote unquote, so to say, that they're now seeing on them because they themselves are on the earliest version of the AT-AT, which is that Republic tank. So at that moment, Rex proceeds to create a plan to turn the tank into the storm to hide because he knows, you know, this one Republic tank against 3 AT-ATs, you know, it's just not going to work. They can't attack them head on. So Kanan proceeds to mock the clones for running and says he thought clones liked to fight. And Rex argues back that he prefers to fight on his own terms. Although they will all be blinded in the storm, a Jedi won't. Kallus mocks the rebels for running, but orders the AT-ATs full steam ahead into the storm to attack the rebels. So now that they have the cover of the storm, the rebels create a plan to take down the AT-ATs. Sabine states that their armor is impervious to blasters, but the walkers have one weak point in their armor, the neck, referring to the design you just said. So Gregor chimes in and states that one well-placed shot from the main gun should destroy it. And then Zeb says, I don't know how we're supposed to shoot something we can't see. I don't even know where the enemy is. And now Kanan starts buying into the plan that's being laid out by Rex. And Kanan says, you don't always have to see something to know where it is. If you're willing to trust me, I can get us that shot. And Rex says, I always trust my general. And that was a really cool scene because, again, he knows Kanan's on the fence about trusting him, but Rex is so loyal to the Jedi. He was so loyal to Anakin and Ahsoka. And I think he sees his old masters in Kanan, particularly because Kanan, you know, he's so unique. He's become a master Jedi following his own path to this point. And I think Rex is clearly a standout smart commander. I think he sees that. I think he does see, Anakin and Ahsoka in Kanan, or the potential anyways, despite the stubbornness. I mean, remember, Anakin and Ahsoka were very much stubborn in their own ways. He saw Ahsoka grow up. Ahsoka from the Battle of Chrysosis was incredibly stubborn. She grew up to be somebody totally different. And I think Rex sees that in Kanan also. So Kanan uses the Force to maneuver the tank into a position where the AT-ATs are surrounded by them, which is kind of odd, but apparently that was his intent. Mm-hmm. And Rex begins to think about it, and he thinks, while crazy, that is the best chance for them to get a successful shot. Sabine chimes in, once we fire, we'll reveal our location. If we miss, it's all over. And Gregor says, I'll take the shot. Kanan chimes in and says, no, Ezra should take the shot. And Ezra's like, oh, why don't you do it? And Rex goes, Kanan's right. We need one Jedi up there manning the cannon and another Jedi down here to lead us out of this mess. You're the only ones who can see in this storm. Sabine, spot him. And then there's a really cool moment here because Rex tosses Ezra his clone helmet to help him in the storm. And if you remember, as soon as the rebels entered the vehicle in the previous episode, Ezra, who's all about collecting helmets, just totally wanted to get his hands on those clone helmets, because Ezra knows, like, even though he's a kid, again, I'm talking about the comparison to the stormtrooper helmets with the clone helmets. He knows that, hey, this is like a true, piece of armor, unlike these like crappy plastic domes that I've been collecting. This is like collecting like a true like artifact, something super old school. And he gets excited when Rex tosses him the helmet. I thought that was a really cool moment.
Man, I was excited too. It made me want to go and see if I could get a Rex helmet or something. I definitely want a clone trooper helmet. I just don't know which one or where I could find that.
Yeah, I do too. I've been treading carefully into going too far down that. I know I've picked up a couple of Mandalorian helmets. I do want clone stuff. I know when the Bad Batch came out, they have like the coolest unique helmets, and I'm just like a total huge fan of Tech, his helmet. Mm-hmm. So that's the clone helmet I want, aside from Rex. I would have to say Rex and Tech from the Bad Batch, but not quite there yet. I will get there. So getting back to the episode, Ezra proceeds to man the gun, but quickly realizes that the targeting scope is not going to help. And Kanan tells him, hey man, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to see it with your eyes. Trust yourself. So Ezra proceeds to reach out to the Force to locate the walker neck and fires his shot, immediately downing the walker. Kanan urges Wolf to begin moving as the Empire has now found their location based off of their blaster shot. So another cool moment. I think it's been a while since we've seen this from Ezra, but he reaches out to the Force, is able to locate the blaster neck despite him not being able to see anything at all. Takes the shot. The confidence is there. So you see Ezra just, again, further continuing to grow as a Jedi. So back on the Star Destroyer, Admiral Constantine asked for an update on Callus, but the officers inform him that they have lost communications because of the storm. However, an incoming transmission alerts the Star Destroyer to rendezvous with Lord Vader's shuttle, at which point the Star Destroyer immediately takes off.
Right.
And Hera chimes in, this is either really good or really bad, because there is just no reason for the Empire to be leaving, their position after they've clearly got an advantage on finally capturing these rebels that have been eluding them for so long.
Right.
So the team prepares to leave on the Phantom now that they've kind of gotten an opening to, to get out of this entanglement, so that they can rendezvous with the Ghost. However, Ezra is upset because he knows the clones will still need help against the remaining walkers, and that part of the mission was to bring back Rex as well, and now they're just going to abandon them. And Rex chimes in, "You're not abandoning anyone. We're covering your escape. Now move. We're soldiers, Ezra. This is what we were born to do." So they show the clones begin firing against the walkers, but of course they're outgunned. It doesn't matter that they've taken down one AT-AT. There's still two more, one of which is being led by Kallus himself.
Right.
And as the Ghost crew is taking off in the Phantom, Ezra tells Kanan, you know better than anyone, they won't give up. This fight is going to be their last. And Hera's talking to Kanan on the comms, and she tells him, it's too bad about Captain Rex, but at least you got the intel. I'll rendezvous with you shortly. Kanan, copy that. Ezra chimes in again. What are we going to tell Ahsoka? Rex was her friend, even though he was a clone. And Kanan finally 2 episodes in, we're getting towards the end of this episode, he sighs and gives in and says, I hate it when he's right. I've got my problems with the clones, but I don't want those men to die. So I'm not saying this was expected, that you were going to see this. It's just, but I don't want to short sell again the growth of Kanan. And this was a huge moment for him. It took everything with Ezra, with Rex, everything, the team, the clones and the rebels working together to finally get Kanan to admit, hey, you know what? Not all the clones are bad clones.
Right.
So really cool moment. So Kanan immediately turns the Phantom around and goes back to help the clones. Kanan and Ezra both leap down on the AT-AT and overtake it to fire and take down Kallus's AT-AT. When Rex and the crew see this, they're just immediately reminded of the old days when Jedi and clones fought together. It was a really cool action sequence when they jumped off of the Phantom and just kind of cut that hole through the head and took over the AT-AT and shot the other one down. It kind of reminded me of Empire when Luke's snowspeeder is downed. So he gets off, takes his lightsaber out, and the cable, right? And just kind of takes the AT-AT down himself. Yeah, that was a cool scene. That reminded me of this one. So after they down Kallus's AT-AT, Kallus escapes on speeder as the rebels celebrate a victory. And Rex goes, looks like we live to fight another day. Wolf, don't we always? Gregor, well, we do when we've got a Jedi leading us. And this was another cool moment because after he says that, the clones kind of look up towards Kanan, who's standing on top of the AT-AT, and they salute him because, clones were born to help the Republic and help the Jedi. So they're here they are several years later, decommissioned, so old, and they're serving yet again another Jedi. And I also want to chime in here for a lot of people that might not be familiar with the voice of the clones. There's only one voice for every single clone in the animated series, and it's voiced by they're voiced by D. Bradley Baker. So anytime I see these sequences where it's several clones talking to each other, keep in mind this is one guy talking to himself.
Right, and there's slight inflection in his voice. So I've always been impressed by that man's ability to, especially in the Bad Batch, which he's the only voice actor there besides Omega, basically.
Yeah. So he doesn't voice Omega, even though Omega's a clone, right? But yeah, that's even more impressive because in the Bad Batch, there's basically 5 of them, including Echo. So yeah, that's all him. And a quick little story. I don't want to get too far off base, but it's also going to lead into the ending for this episode a scene I'm going to touch on. I was fortunate to meet D. Bradley Baker in Vegas in October, the same time I met Ashley Eckstein. And I was second in line, and there was a kid in front of me who had a Captain Rex figure for him to sign. And I remember I got to see the kid go up to D. Bradley Baker, and he hands him the Rex figure to get autographed. And D. Bradley Baker looks at him. He's like, "Oh, so you're a fan of Captain Rex?" And he says it in the voice. I know I totally butchered it there. Yeah. But the kid was just looking at him enamored, and I was looking at him enamored because it was Rex that was talking.
Yeah.
So I just wholly just like geeked out there on the.
It is amazing,
spot.
dude. It is amazing. And let me just take that and take it just a little step further on something else. It's not Star Wars related, but I was fortunate enough to meet Kevin Conroy, who voices Batman from Batman the Animated Series and a bunch of the video games and a bunch of other movies and whatnot. And it was so I couldn't tell you how like geeked out I was when I finally got up to him, and he just has a regular normal voice, and I had to ask. I said, okay, please just hit me with anything, just say anything in the Batman voice. And he just kind of like smirks at me, and he goes, Pete, get to the Batcave.
My goodness,
I need you. And I was like, oh my God, my head exploded, dude, because Batman was literally telling me that he needed my help in solving a crime. And so I know exactly what that little kid felt, because I was immediately transported back to being a little kid in that moment. So voice actors, I will forever say it, have my utmost respect.
Dude, isn't that insane though? How like, I know you've gone to your fair share of cons, and me as well. And it's one thing to see a celebrity that you see on the screen. It's another thing to hear the voice from an animated character. It is. It's definitely I think I geek out harder on that. It's so different, but like so awesome.
Right. I couldn't even imagine how that kid felt, but I guess I could, because I got to talk to Batman, so he got to talk to
and
Captain
I was
Rex.
super happy to experience that, even though it wasn't my experience. I had a personal experience hearing him talk in Captain Rex's voice there in front of me, and it was so awesome. So anyways, I know we went off topic there, but I had to really talk about D. Bradley Baker, because we got clones talking to each other. So it was a huge deal for me. So getting back to the Empire, or the Imperials rather, they show Constantine meet up with Vader's shuttle. However, a new Inquisitor, who's happens to be the fifth brother from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, exits Vader's shuttle, but Vader is not there. So Constantine talks to the Inquisitor and tells him, Inquisitor, I thought Lord Vader was coming aboard. And the Inquisitor tells him, Lord Vader has sent me in his place, Constantine. While this unnecessary diversion may have compromised the success of Agent Callus's mission, we must return. And the Inquisitor tells him, I care not for your struggles. I will succeed where you and Callus have failed. So here enters another Inquisitor. We saw how much, damage the Grand Inquisitor did in the first season, and now we're getting introduced to another one who... They didn't say his name, but the fans out there who are familiar with Obi-Wan Kenobi, this is the same fifth brother that came out in that series that was heavily featured. So now we cut to the Rebels. The Ghost rendezvous with the Phoenix Squadron, and the Ghost crew approaches Ahsoka. And here's the kicker, along with Captain Rex. So Captain Rex does end up going back with the Rebels, as Ahsoka had wanted, of course. So now we see a really awesome interaction. This has to be one of my top 3 favorite Rebels moments. Rex looks at Ahsoka and tells her, Commander, you got old. And Ahsoka responds, had to happen sometime, Rex. Rex tells her, I'm glad you're still alive. And Ahsoka responds, you too. Rex, well, I wouldn't be if it weren't for these guys. And he points to the Ghost crew. And Ahsoka tells him, thank you for trusting my friend. And Kanan says, it wasn't easy. It's still not. And Ahsoka says, nothing worth doing ever is. And that is the end of our episode. But before Pete ends the episode, talking about that con where I met Ashley Eckstein and D. Bradley Baker, I'm going to send you this photo so that you share it, and I'm going to share it on social media. When I was waiting in line to get to meet Ashley Eckstein, who plays Ahsoka, there was a moment where she took a brief break because D. Bradley Baker came to her booth. And they started interacting. And as soon as I saw them talking, I took the picture. I'm pretty sure I sent it to you guys also. I took the picture of them talking because it just totally reminded me of this scene. And I sent it with the exact same caption, them talking. And I said, I'll probably look for the text and send that as opposed to just the picture. I just remember the scene because I sent the picture to all my friends and I sent it with the exact caption, Commander, you got old. Had to happen sometime, Rex. It was easily the coolest, Star Wars moment of my life in person.
I think I do remember getting that now that you mentioned that. But wow, dude, that's a pretty cool moment to experience there live. So after this scene happens, the only thing from a visual standpoint was I guess the scene cuts to like a front almost like a Reservoir Dogs kind of a shot where they're all kind of walking towards the camera, and that's where you kind of see that this small band of rebels has now gained another Jedi, and now one of the best commanders and captains from the Clone Wars in Captain Rex. So I thought that was a pretty cool shot to kind of see that they're no longer alone. Their group is growing and getting more powerful, and like you said, it's just it keeps on keeping on with this series. We keep on heading towards that giant inevitable showdown between the rebels and the Empire once again.
Definitely great episode.
Excellent. So yeah, that brings us to the end of that episode, which was of course season 2 episode 4, Relics of the Old Republic. Next week's episode is going to be season 2 episode 5, Always Two There Are. Now you know what I'm going to say here. Just based on the way that verbiage is laid out, what does that tell you? Always two there are.
The rule of 2, where you're going to get 2 Sith to some extent in the next episode.
Yes, absolutely.
This is reference to Yoda's line in Phantom Menace, always 2 there are, no more, no less.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of was Yoda, the way that sentence was laid out. So yeah, I definitely look forward to that, and I feel like I'm going to say that at the end of each one of our episodes. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. That brings us to the end of our Star Wars recap here on Good Morning Lothal, and want to tell you guys, jump into the comments, give us some feedback, let us know what you're liking, what you're not liking, if anything you wanted to add to anything that was said today. Do you have your own con experiences with any of the Star Wars celebrities, or any celebrity for that matter, that had an impacting moment in your life? Then please share it with us. We definitely want to hear it. Rolly, anything else you want to mention?
Honestly, don't have anything for you guys. Just the usual, Star Wars hype machine for me. Excited for the next episode.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to reach out to the traditional podcast listeners. Once again, if you like it in audio only format, which I don't blame you, because I'm a traditionalist as far as podcast goes too, you please just look for us anywhere you find your podcasts, any of the platforms, you will find us there. So if nothing else, then I guess this has been Pete Salas along with
Rolando Zamora
saying, may the force be with you always, and goodbye from Lothal.